What's up, everybody? Mark with Kardavox Academy here. And today we're going back in time. Not really, because the song's not that old. But we're going back in time genre-wise. So here on the channel, we cover a lot of deathcore. And the main reason for that is deathcore, this being a vocal technique-focused channel. Deathcore has a lot of focus on a lot of technique happening in a small space and time. And as a result, there's always a lot for me to talk about. We don't really talk about death metal a whole lot. We've talked about Benighted, we've talked about a couple others, but we really haven't talked about death metal a lot. And Suffocation is a really good death metal band to talk about. They've been around for a long time, 1988, I think, which is the year I was born. So they've been around for a hot minute. They've got a new-ish vocalist. We'll talk more about that later. But the reason I want to do this video, even though because of the demographic and my average user that I can see in my analytics, this may not have as much drive viewership wise. But the reason I want to do this is because oftentimes you hear deathcore vocals being referred to as the standard of metal vocals. And while I do enjoy deathcore vocals, I really enjoy deathcore vocals. In fact, I had a little period of when I was tired of them, but recently, starting with Shadow of Intent's most recent album, I've kind of gotten back into them. Although I would say that Shadow of Intent, I wouldn't put them purely in the deathcore camp, but you know what I mean? Good gateway towards that slippery slope, if I can mix my metaphors or something. But anyways, there are some things I want to talk about, which we'll get more into here, but I think there's a lot of value to be found in death metal vocalization, both as a genre and a technique and all this stuff. Now, if you're new to the channel, my name is Mark. I'm a metal vocalist myself, been a metal vocalist for roughly 14 years. I've been doing this for a while, and I'm also a full-time vocal coach. I teach people how to I specifically focus on harsh vocals. I give the occasional clean singing lesson, but mostly I'm teaching people how to make sounds like safely and efficiently. That's my whole gig. It's what I do for a living, and it's a lot of fun. So if you're interested in that, keep an eye on the bottom of the screen. We always add some information there. But if you like the content, if you like the reaction format, just be aware that I do pause a lot. I talk a lot because I like to talk about technique, and my goal is to not, show you goofy faces, although that's going to happen. It's mostly to give you vocal information that you may need or you may already know, but just enjoy hearing about. So if you like it, like, share, and subscribe. It means a lot to watch the channel grow. And that's all I got. Oh, also, if you like the way that I explain things, if you like the way that I sort of relay information, we do have an e-course, something floating in the air. We do have an e-course on KardavoxAcademy.com, False Chord Fundamentals. It's a great e-course. If you want to learn Fry, it's not going to teach you that there, although we will have a Fry e-course coming down the road. But for now, it's a great place to start if you're brand new to metal vocals or, you've been doing false chord for a very long time, but something's not quite clicking. You kind of need a reapproach. That's a great way to do it. And then I do offer one-on-one lessons as well. We're booked to heck for now, but send us an email anyway. Now that I've got all that away, let's check out Suffocation, Seraphim Enslavement. Here we go. All right, that's sort of a transition. This is death metal in its purest form. So we're not going to have clean, smooth transitions, generally speaking. So I'm just going to have to. I always try to wait for an audible transition to pause, so it's a little easier on the ears. But we're listening to old school death metal. Easy on the ears isn't the point here, is it? So far, this song is a bop. Also, by the way, my apologies for the boxes. That is one of my hobbies outside of metal music and video games is genealogy. And this is, my parents just recently moved, and this is all family photos that I have to organize going back a long time. So Sorry about the mess here. But anyway, so far this song is a bop. And I'm really glad because in this first 50 seconds, this is an exemplification of exactly why I wanted to do an old school death metal song, right? So what we are hearing here is a ton of nuance on one vocal style, right? Unlike deathcore, and this comparison I'm about to make is not a qualitative comparison. It's not to say one is better than the other. They are distinctly different, however. One thing that we would get in deathcore is we would, by 1 minute in, we'd be hearing tunnel throats, we'd be hearing highs, we'd be hearing lows, we'd be hearing like fry false chord hybrids, we'd be hearing all this crazy stuff. And so sometimes when deathcore people, you know, especially younger deathcore people, listen to older death metal, it's not their cup of tea, which that part's totally fine, but I want to kind of explain some of the appeal here. What we are hearing is we are hearing a lot of subtle nuance on one vocal style, and that's coming from tongue position, that's coming from distortion place, or I'm sorry, I should say resonance placement, and it's coming from patterns and articulation, right? One thing that death metal does that can be very cool is it plays with pattern. You know, the guitars will be doing something percussive, and maybe the death metal vocals are going like on a dotted quarter note beat. You know, maybe they're going on a gallop, things like that. So they play much more of a rhythm role than a lead role much of the time. Now, as far as the generation of the distortion is concerned, what we have here is this is one that on the internet in the last couple months, I've been seeing the terminology morph and change a little bit. I have a whole video that I'm going to be doing on metal vocal terminology and why I think it's so important and why I also kind of hate it. I've got a love-hate relationship with it. This is often referred to as like an arytenoidal growl. Some people would call this more epiglottal, a compressed false chord. Regardless of all those terms, I want to tell you kind of what's going on here, right? So if we think about vocal distortion, that's not fry distortion. And the only reason I'm making that separation is because there's just none of that going on here. But if we think about we can actually keep them together. If we think about vocal distortion, much of the time it's stuff that happens naturally while we speak. Fry's a little bit of an outlier because when we lean into fry, this is a fry register, but you don't really scream with that. You can't really. So even though we do have fry naturally in our voices much of the time, you can hear it right now when I'm talking. It's not that much like the scream, although we can use it to inform the process of the scream, right? However, with false chord, and with this, like, I'm going to call it more arytenoidal. If you want to call it something different, that's totally fine. This more compressed arytenoidal sound these are sounds that happen very, very naturally. So one example is, let's say I'm talking false chord, pure, basic, false chord at its most root form, but I'm talking about it less in a metal way, and I'm talking about it more in like a naturally occurring way. Let's say I'm calling out to somebody. I might say, hey, what's up, dude? Hey. That's a voice you hear a lot at like sports games, right? You'll hear somebody and they're like, oh, come on. False chord. Oh, come on. Oh, come on. Oh, right? False chord. This would come from something more like, hey. Tell me if you can, I say tell me like you can tell me. In the comments, tell me if you can hear the difference. False chord, hey. Arytenoidal, hey. My wife does this one a lot. Our dog, he walks around and he gets really, really distracted like me. And so to get his attention, sometimes she'll be like, hey, dozer. And I'm just like, man, she could be doing gutturals if she wanted to, right? So with this sound, I'll talk about how we generate it later. But with this sound, if we focus on airflow and not true chord phonation, this becomes and that's the basis of a lot of what we're hearing here, right? Now, I'll go ahead and push play here in a second, but moving forward, I want you to think about the way he's articulating. His articulation is very, 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 this is Ricky Myers, I believe. This is the newer vocalist. Frank Mullen's the old vocalist. But Ricky is doing a lot of huge callbacks to old school death metal vocals. That like, dory, that forward sort of like pinched O sound. You hear a lot of that. So think about that moving forward. Listen for movements in the scream, different changes in tongue position, changes in embouchure. What's the soft palate doing? What's the pharyngeal space opening? Is it closing? What are we getting here? But think about that. If this is not your normal thing, it's okay if by the end of the video you still don't like it, but sit back and rather than critiquing it, observe it and see what you can find. I'll of course tell you, but that's our bass sound. Here we go. All right, I'm already going to pause it. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. He just did something really, really cool. So one thing that can be difficult, one phoneme that can be difficult is the E phoneme, right? It can be a hard vowel to sing. It can be a hard vowel to scream. And part of the reason for that is E is a very narrow closed vowel. If we think about the shape of the vocal tract, right? E, it's very buzzy in the front. You can use it to do some really cool pig squeal stuff, right? But for a lot of old vocalists and new vocalists and experienced vocalists, it can be a difficult vowel to control. So what we can do, this is really neat. Just watch. She's going to shoot me a message and be like, that's not what I did. And I'll be like, I'm sorry. But what it sounded like he did, and what you can do is you can take your curled tongue like you have for an R, for a guttural, and you can slide it back. Do you hear that? Do you hear that brightness, that sort of arcing overtone on there that sounds like an E? Way. It sounds like I said way, right? So if I put my distortion through here, I can say way normally. Way. Do you hear how that's closing up the pharyngeal space? If that's not a sound you want, it's not a sound you want. What if I say way? All I'm doing is sliding my tongue back and closing my jaw a little bit. Versus way. You hear how it would be a lot easier to manage, right? So that's a really cool point of articulation here. Anyways, let's keep going. And there's a normal E. I think he said to be free. That's cool. To be free. That's that tighter E. So there's an example of how we get contrast on the same vocal all the way through. He just does lows, right? You would hear some people critique old school death metal this way. We just had 2 E's, and to somebody who really enjoys listening to vowel production and things, that's a very classy choice. Love that. Okay, that's right before the guitar solo. There we go. So one thing you can think about, right? Oh, I said I'd talk about distortion generation. We'll get there. There's just so much more to metal vocals than how to do a false chord and a fried and a rythmoid growl. There's so much more to talk about, but I will. So with this being said, one thing that I'm hearing him do and that you can do is he's deviating sound almost like he's got like a rudder or like a mobile dam, and he's moving that sound around. And that can be a really good way to think about your tongue position, right? If my voice is liquid coming out of my mouth, what can I do to deviate the flow of that liquid? And this is a really good thing because deviate doesn't mean block, right? We could say occlude, but I like deviate. But anyway, it doesn't matter. So if I block my oral space with my tongue, it's totally closed off. You can maybe make some cool niche tones, but can't do much past that, right? So one thing I'm hearing is he's doing like a mid, right? There's a lot of frequency play here. Sounds like a kink. There's a lot of frequency play going on here, right? And so let's say I have a mid. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my tongue and I'm going to rest it on my upper side teeth. And I'm going to drop it. I'm going to make like this shape. We're going to do it here. So, I'm starting with. Do you hear how there's some subtle difference in that tone? When you really control those things and you really use those movements strategically, you can create some great nuance. You can create some great nuance in the voice, and you can supplement the music really, really well, right? Now let's talk about the distortion generation. Now, this is probably something I'll have up on KardavoxAcademy.com along with our false chord fundamental e-course down the road, but I'm going to talk to you about it now because it's valuable, right? So one thing that is, I think, the biggest misconception, and one of the trickiest things to navigate with students is when you talk about compression, which is a dicey term, or strategic tension, we hear those words and we think, of course, tense, compress. That's a lot of holding back. That's a lot of squeezing, and like, yes, but no, right? So for example, I have to have some tension in my hand to hold this cup, but I'm not like straining my hand muscles, right? If let's use something that I can drop. Okay, my battery charger for my DSLR, right? If I don't have any tension, this is gonna fall, right? Ah, man, I meant to catch it. I wasn't good at sports. Obviously, I have to have some tension, or maybe we should say activation, in these muscles for this to work. But the difference between this and this is very, very small. It's very, very subtle, right? What a lot of students will do if we represent this, if we use this to represent our vocal production, right? What a lot of students will do is they'll go from here, super loose, which is great for false, like open, old school false chord, right? And they will squeeze like this as hard as they can. My hand muscles are getting tired. I've got some dull pain from the corners of this, and I couldn't hold this for very long. But when we have terms like tension, compression, this is a little sneak preview into why I kind of hate vocal terms, even though they are valuable. They're valuable. I'm not saying they're not. I just also hate them. When we have terms like this, we have to supplement that with a lot of context and a lot of nuance, right? So what's an example of this? This is gonna be really hard to think about because let's face it, when we have distortion, we have a lot of texture on our voice, and that can be hard. That can make it hard for us to hear what's going on mechanically within the vocal tract, right? So for example, if I'm telling you, hey, listen to how gentle my muscular activation is for my compressed arytenoidal sound, and then I give you this as an example, like, thanks, Mark, that was freaking useless, right? So one of the best things we can do when we're working on our metal vocals is we can use our clean voice. In fact, when I'm working on a new metal vocal, usually at the beginning, my practice, this is when I'm working on tone, right? My practice is usually going to be like 60 or 70% with my clean voice and like 40 to 30% with my distortion. Whew. Thank God that math was right. I wasn't good at sports. I wasn't good at math. I wasn't good at much. So, let's use our clean voice. I want you to hear what happens when I make the change from because clearly there's a change there, right? I want you to hear what that's like with my clean voice because that's going to better convey to you how gentle this is. That's it. That's it. That's the whole thing. I feel a very gentle squeeze on the back of my tongue. The area of my soft palate feels like it tenses very, very slightly, and not by the larynx, or I'm sorry, not by the glottis, but above the glottis, there's a little feeling of like almost like swallowing. Almost. Right there. That's all you need. If you have this, you can make this distortion, which doesn't sound very cool on its own, but if you lean into it and shape it, you can make a lot of really cool tones. And that's what we have here. In fact, if you listen to Ricky's vocals, you can hear and you can see in the video, right? Obviously, this is a performance. He may be lip syncing, but I'd be willing to bet this is a lot of what he looks like on the studio. And I've never seen this band live, but this is probably a lot of what he looks. Actually, no, I think I did at Tech Fest in 2015, but that would have been with Frank. So never mind. I don't know. It was somebody. I'm not going to remembering things either. But this relaxation, right? This relaxation is key. One exercise I work with, I'll say this and then I'll get back to it. One exercise I work with with a lot of my students is we pant slowly, don't hyperventilate like a dog. Once they have to be able to do false chord distortion to make this happen. Then we throw some false chord on it, right? You don't need much more effort than that for most, not all, most screams. So, hey, 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 t, 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 all of that feels almost the same. And it can be very valuable for you to think about talking in your distortion, right? So let's say everybody got mad that I ripped up a magic card in the Whitechapel video. So let's pick one. How about this alternative art, Swords to Plowshares? I'm gonna rip it. I'm kidding. I won't rip this one. The other one was just like a bullcrap comment. It didn't matter. It was a foil, but who gives a shit, right? So let's say I'm reading this. If I'm reading this in my false chord voice, right? Now, reading is not going to sound a lot like a metal vocal, right? It's going to sound like metal distortion with spoken activation. All right, so Swords to Plowshares, instant, exile target creature. Its controller gains life equal to its power. Okay, now I'm going to do this one. Hey, 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 right. The Playmaster turned his fury into his new foes, root rot and cabbage slugs. Myths and Miracles, Volume 7. Right. The Roman numerals threw me for a loop. So, relaxation, light activation, small muscle movements yield big results when balanced properly. Let's go. Oh. One minor critique I'm going to make here, you know, and most of the time when I do these videos, I focus on the things that I see that you should do that are good to do. I usually don't point out flaws or discrepancies or things like that, because unless it's like a vocal safety issue, it's all subjective, right? That's the thing. You know, it's, as a vocal coach, it's interesting. Like, it's not interesting, actually. This is not interesting at all. So I'm going to tell you about it. But as a vocal coach, like, really, I don't care how you sound. I do care how you sound, but I also am aware that so much of what we deem as good and bad is just subjective taste that's probably going to change in 5 years anyway. So if you have a metal vocal and you think it sounds cool and the people around you think it sounds cool, then hell yeah, great job, right? Obviously, with metal vocals, with art, we're trying to convey a message, right? And so we need people to resonate with that message. So people are like, oh, I don't care what other people think. Shut up. Yes, you do. We all do. Whenever somebody says, I don't care what other people think, I'm like, okay, insecure, huh? Me too. But anyway, so he sounds amazing. That's not the part I'm talking about. This might be the first time I've heard Ricky, and as far as his like tone, I love it. But this is like a vocal safety thing. One thing he's doing, again, this is a music video, and so he may be not overly, but he may be performing, he may be lip syncing, but I'm seeing a lot of shoulders back, head forward, head tilted. Now that's a cool pose, right? Oh, I can't do it here. I was going to pull out my mic as a prop, but whatever. That's a cool pose. It looks very commanding. You know, oftentimes when we see monsters in video games trailers, what's the monster going to do every single time? Every single time in a video game trailer or a horror movie trailer, the big monster walks out. What does it have to do? It has to cross its arms and scream every time. It's honestly kind of annoying. The monster's going to go, whoa, and then, you know, it's going to be like, coming this fall, the same game you've played a million times, right? So there is the fact that he looks cool while doing this. However, if we think about the vocal tract, we can think about it like a hose, like a candy cane shaped hose, right? So here it is. Ooh, there we go. Now, what happens to a hose when you do that? Right? What happens to a hose when you do that? Well, it creates a lot of pressure. It creates pinch points, right? And we can do that with a garden hose to get the water farther. But, a garden hose doesn't have nerve endings, tissue that can be damaged, things like this. Generally speaking, when we are utilizing our voice, we don't want to be cranking it back this way. In fact, if you're at home and you pull your shoulders back and lift your chin, you're going to notice that you feel a little tension in the muscles here. You feel a little stretch, right, along the laryngeal muscles. So generally speaking, when we're doing our vocals, now listen, okay, if ever Kardashev plays live again, which probably won't happen, but it could, right? Or if you go back and watch some of my music videos, you'll see some performance too, and I'm sure that you'll see some mistakes because in the moment, it's very hard to keep track of. But generally speaking, we want to be in what I call job interview posture, right? So shoulders back, relaxed, chin forward, facing the world in the eye, right? And if we want to bend, we want to do kind of like the George Clooney Batman movement, right? Like he had that full rubber suit, so he'd look around like this. So if I was on stage and I wanted to, maybe summon this same energy of this like scream, instead of this, I might do more this, right? I might like lean in and like look down at people. That can equally be intimidating, right? The Gaul. Gaul, the old vocalist for Gorgoroth, has some of my favorite stage presence of any metal vocalist ever. But anyway, so my point is this: for new vocalists saying this, don't create these pinch points in your vocal anatomy. Pain and strain is a very high chance when you're doing this. And will it damage your voice forever? Probably not. But will it make it? Does it increase the risk of you having to take off a week because you pulled a muscle and now you're losing progress because you couldn't practice for a week? Yeah, it is increasing that risk. Plus, like, who likes being in pain? Don't answer that. Let's go. His tone there was immaculate. Oh man, those open, wide, gravelly, relaxed, low. Is this guy wearing bunny ears? Tell me those don't look like bunny ears. Those look like bunny ears on the top of his head. Hey, you wear those bunny ears. I'm all about it. You wear what you want to wear. Actually, I think he's probably just like wearing some sort of like scarf and shaking his head. So anyways, it doesn't matter, right? So what are some things he was doing to get that big, wide open tone? Number one, relaxing, right? Relaxing. So I want to talk to you about something real quick. Oftentimes when we're trying to get lower tones, and this is people who have been watching the channel for a long time, they're going to be like, but Mark, you always say, hold on, right? So oftentimes when we're trying to get lower tones, we are creating cavernous spaces with the tongue. We're dropping the jaw. We're puckering the lips. And this is all correct. This is all correct. Another way, not the only way, not a must way, but another way that we can get lower is to relax and get a little quieter. Why is that, right? Well, think about a guitar string, right? If you do like the lowest on the neck E, right? Assuming we're in standard tuning here, 6-string standard tuning, right? And you pluck that string, okay, you don't even need to fret it. You just pluck that string. That string is vibrating very, 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 very quickly. So what do we get? Higher frequency. So what do we get? Higher pitch, right? Then you do the top one. I'm not a guitarist. The top E, right? It's going slower. So what do we get? Lower frequency, lower pitch. So if I am, the stuff in my throat is literally moving around slower. Now, is this enough to like build a guttural on its own with? No, probably not. But it's a good ingredient to put into the pot, right? Now, with a lot of tongue placement here, we have it kind of curled like a guttural, but halfway in the mouth. Right, don't be fair. This is you can hear that it's like this cavernous kind of low mid sound that's really, really, really powerful. Also, that was my favorite section of the song. This whole song has been really cool. Seraphim Enslavement is a bop. I love it. But I'm just a sucker for down tempo. I don't know what it is. Just like for example, if any of you know who Author and Punisher is, who has a very metal vibe, just like that. Give me 10 minutes of just and I'm into it, right? We're almost at the end, so let's finish this song out. He really pulled his punches till the end. I feel like we've definitely got multiple layers and some stuff going on there. God, that sounds sick. It's like a I don't know. I want to pick that one apart. That's sick sounding. Let's hear that one. Now, I won't do that to our editor. Let's play it out. Okay, that's it. Okay, so Suffocation, Seraphim Enslavement, excellent song. If you're not a death metal vocalist person, I hope I could kind of give you at least, even if you still don't like it, I hope I've given you an appreciation for what these vocals are about, what they do. It's a lot about nuance, right? If you think of deathcore vocals, think of a dish that is intensely complex, right? It's got crunchy, it's got soft, it's got, you know, spicy, it's got sweet, it's salty, it's complex flavors. It's something that comes out on the plate and you're like, holy crap, I don't even know like how to approach this. There's so much going on. And it's just like this delicious experience, right? Death metal vocals, sometimes we can think of as like a really, really good piece of sushi, right? We've got just a couple ingredients. We've got the most amazing fresh fish, rice cooked to like the perfect texture, right? With just a little bit of that like grainy, rich flavor to it. And then just like a dab of like soy sauce, right? Now, we may have one that we prefer over the other from a taste perspective. I'm actually getting hungry talking about this, right? But both dishes are complex in their own way, right? Both dishes take some time to master, right? I mean, sure, you could just slap some fish on rice and call it sushi, but it's a lot about the quality of the ingredients, like the quality of the cuts, right? Likewise, with a lot of death metal, we have a vocalist doing a lot of the same tone all the way through, but then if you listen, it's not the same tone. It's a lot of mastery of patterns, cadence, prosody. It's a lot of manipulation of tongue and mouth space. It's a lot of endurance, right? This guy did not slow down. He did not get tired. He was holding tones for very long periods of time without getting tired. And it was awesome, right? So that's it. I could talk more, but this is already 35 minutes and I got a lot of student emails I got to get to. So I'm just like Veil of Maya's, it's not safe to swim today, I'm going to end abruptly. Many thanks, much love, I'm out. No hate to Veil of Maya. That's actually one of my favorite endings to any song ever written. Bye. Cheers. I love this mug. My friend got it for my wife, and I love it, so I use it more than my wife does. It's the benefit of working from home. You get your first dib on all the mugs. If you're thinking about working from home and what it's like, that's the best part. You get to always have the mug you like. Everything else is just, nothing compared to that.